The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called with unusual urgency. Representative after representative filed into the Grand Chamber. Their various forms, creating a tapestry of colors, shapes, and sizes that represented 300 civilized species from across the galaxy. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive sphere that allowed each species to occupy their preferred environmental zone, while sophisticated translation technology ensured everyone could understand each other perfectly. Ambassador Min-Jun Kim walked calmly through the human entrance corridor, his neat black suit a stark contrast to the elaborate robes, armor, and biological displays worn by other species. At 28, he was young for a Galactic Council ambassador, but humanity had learned that youth did not mean inexperience. Min-Jun had been trained since childhood in the art of galactic diplomacy, though his real education had come from studying humanity's long, bloody history on Earth. He took his seat in the human section, a modest platform positioned neither prominently nor obscurely within the chamber's complex geometry. 50 years had passed since humanity had been admitted to the Galactic Council, and in that time, humans had maintained a reputation for being polite, helpful, and remarkably quiet. They participated in trade agreements, shared their unusual mathematical approaches to physics, and generally kept to themselves. Most species found humans pleasant enough, if somewhat boring. The council chair, an ancient being named Thol Van, whose species had been part of the council for over 6,000 years, called the session to order. His crystalline body refracted light in complex patterns that his species used for communication, though the translation system rendered his words into forms everyone could understand. This emergency session addresses the Vraxian Dominion's declared intention to invade the Kelith colony worlds, Tholvan announced, his translated voice carrying the weight of millennia. The Kelith are a peaceful species under council protection. We must determine our response according to the established protocols of civilized warfare. Min-Jun listened carefully as various representatives stood to speak. The debate followed familiar patterns. Min-Jun listened if C, the Kelith representative, a small, furry being named Sela, who served as her species' prime minister, pleaded for help with tears streaming down her face. The Vraxian war prince Kolrex, a massive reptilian creature whose scales gleamed like polished obsidian, declared his species' right to Kelith territory based on ancient claims that predated the council itself. Other representatives proposed traditional solutions. The Mandorian Empire suggested a formal honor duel between champions. The Crystalline Collective recommended lengthy negotiations to establish territorial boundaries. The Avian Concordat proposed economic sanctions that would take years to have any effect. Each solution followed the established rules of galactic warfare, rules that had been refined over thousands of years. These rules were considered sacred by most species. Wars were to be declared formally, with proper notice given to all parties. Battles were to be fought in designated zones, away from civilian populations. Combatants were expected to show honor and respect to their enemies. Civilians were never to be targeted. Prisoners were to be treated well. Certain weapons were forbidden as too cruel. The rules went on for volumes, covering every conceivable aspect of civilized conflict. Min-Jun understood these rules perfectly. He also understood that humanity had stopped following such rules about 300 years ago, back on Earth, after the last great war that had nearly destroyed their species. Humans had learned a hard lesson in that terrible conflict. There was no such thing as civilized war. There was only violence and death, dressed up in whatever honorable language people chose to use. After 2 hours of debate, Tholvan finally called on the human delegation. Min-Jun stood smoothly and walked to the central speaking platform. He did not hurry. He did not show emotion. These were techniques humanity had perfected over decades of galactic diplomacy. The human government has reviewed the situation, Min-Jun began, his voice calm and professional. We acknowledge the Kelith as our friends and trading partners. We have mutual defense agreements that we intend to honor. Kolrex laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. The humans wish to protect the prey species? How amusing. Your military is small, human. You have few ships, fewer soldiers. You are not a warrior race. Min Jun turned to face the Vraxian war prince directly. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes made several of the older council members shift uncomfortably in their places. We offer the Vraxian Dominion this one opportunity, Min Jun said quietly. Withdraw your claim to Kelith territory. Cease all military preparations. Return to your borders. If you do this, there will be no further consequences. And if we refuse? Colrex demanded, rising to his full impressive height. He towered over the human by nearly 2 meters. If we proceed with our rightful claim, what will you do, little human? Will you declare war? Will you meet us in honorable battle? Min Jun was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft enough that the translation systems had to amplify it for everyone to hear. We will neutralize the threat. The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Representatives turned to each other, trying to understand what the human meant. Tholvan called for order, his crystalline body flashing with patterns that indicated confusion. Ambassador Kim, Tholvan said carefully, please clarify your statement. Are you declaring humanity's intention to engage in warfare with the Vraxian Dominion should they proceed? No, Min Jun replied simply. I said we will neutralize the threat. That is different from warfare. More confusion rippled through the chamber. Several representatives called out questions. What did neutralize mean? How was it different from war? What were the humans planning? Colrex laughed again, louder this time. You see? The humans speak in riddles because they are afraid. They cannot even bring themselves to speak of battle directly. This is why humanity will never be a power in this galaxy. You are too soft, too weak, too concerned with your strange philosophies. Perhaps, Min Jun acknowledged with a slight nod. However, our offer stands. Withdraw now, or we will neutralize the threat you represent to our allies. The choice is yours. 2. The Vraxian war prince slammed one massive clawed hand against his platform, creating a sound like thunder. The Vraxian Dominion does not withdraw. We do not surrender. We take what is ours by right of strength. He turned to address the entire council. Let it be recorded that the Vraxian Dominion formally declares its intention to claim the Kelith colony worlds. We will honor all council protocols for civilized warfare. We will provide the traditional 3-day notice before our fleets move. We will fight only in designated battle zones. We will show the galaxy what true warriors can accomplish. Many of the warrior species in the council chamber showed signs of approval. This was how things should be done. This was proper. This followed the ancient traditions that had governed galactic conflict for millennia. Min Jun simply nodded once more. Your intentions are noted. Humanity will respond accordingly. He returned to his seat, without another word. Tholvan tried to call for further discussion. But the matter seemed settled. The Vraxians had declared their intention following all proper protocols. The humans had made their position clear, though no one was quite sure what that position actually meant. The council would observe, as it always did, and ensure that the coming conflict followed civilized rules. As the session concluded and representatives began filing out, several of the older species ambassadors found themselves troubled. They had dealt with humans for 5 decades now, and had learned that humans rarely spoke without purpose. When humans made simple, direct statements, they usually meant exactly what they said. But what did it mean to neutralize a threat without warfare? Prime Minister Sela approached Min Jun as he prepared to leave. Her small form trembled with fear and hope mixed together. Ambassador Kim, she said in her soft voice, can your people truly help us? The Vraxians are so powerful. They have 1,000 warships. They have conquered 6 species in the past century. They honor no one, and nothing, except strength. Min Jun looked down at her with an expression that might have been sympathy. Prime Minister Sela, I want you to understand something very carefully. In 3 days, the Vraxian Dominion will attempt to invade your colonies. They believe they will face your defense forces in battle, defeat them, and claim your worlds according to the old ways. He paused, choosing his words with precision. That battle will not occur. The threat will be neutralized. Your people will be safe. But how? Sela asked desperately. I don't understand what you mean. I know, Minjun said gently. Most species don't. But you will see. We learned certain lessons on Earth. Lessons written in the ashes of our world. We learned that the best way to protect the innocent is not to fight fair. It's to make sure the fight never happens at all. Sela wanted to ask more questions, but Minjun politely excused himself and left the chamber. As he walked through the corridors toward the human transport that would take him back to Earth, he activated his personal communicator. This is Ambassador Kim, he said quietly. The Vraxians have committed. Operation Silent Shield is authorized. Begin execution at your discretion, General Park. On the other end of the communication, thousands of light years away on Earth, General Park Ji-woo received the message in the Strategic Command Center, buried deep beneath the Korean peninsula. She was a woman in her 50s who had spent 30 years in Earth's unified military, and she had been preparing for this exact scenario for the past 6 months. Understood, Ambassador, she replied. All assets are in position. We've been ready since the Vraxians started their saber rattling. The operation will be clean, quiet, and complete. General Park closed the connection and turned to her staff. The command center was filled with the best strategic minds humanity had produced. Unlike the galactic species who saw warfare as something grand and glorious, these men and women understood that real combat was about information, preparation, and making sure your enemy never got the chance to fire a shot. Execute Operation Silent Shield, she ordered calmly. No human casualties, no Keyleth casualties, minimal Vraxian casualties if possible. By the time they realize what's happening, it will already be over. Her staff began their work with quiet efficiency. Orders flowed to assets that had been positioned carefully over months of preparation. No ships launched from Earth. No troops boarded transports. No weapons were armed or aimed. The humans were about to wage war without warfare. A concept that would soon shake the entire galaxy's understanding of conflict. They were about to demonstrate why the most dangerous human was not the one pointing a weapon at you, but the one you never saw coming. Colrex returned to his flagship, full of confidence and pride. He would show the galaxy that the Vraxian Dominion remained a force to be feared. He would add the Keleth worlds to his empire. And he would teach these presumptuous humans what happened to weak species who threatened warriors. He had no idea that his entire military had already been compromised, that human intelligence had been inside his systems for months, or that in 72 hours, his mighty fleet would be nothing but floating metal coffins, defeated without a single shot being fired. The age of honorable warfare was about to end, and most of the galaxy didn't even know it yet. The Vraxian staging area, designated as Military Zone 97, was an impressive sight. Over 1,000 warships hung in the darkness of space, arranged in the traditional attack formation that had served the Vraxian Dominion well for 3 centuries. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, bristling with weapons and armor, crewed by warriors who had trained their entire lives for combat. War Prince Colrex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and felt satisfaction fill his chest. In 6 hours, the mandatory 3-day waiting period would end, and his fleet would jump to the Keleth colonies. The prey species would have time to prepare their pathetic defenses. As council rules required, it would make no difference. The Keleth had perhaps 50 outdated defense platforms and a handful of patrol ships. His fleet would sweep them aside like dust. War Prince, his communications officer reported, the council observers have arrived and are in position. They will record our glorious victory for the historical archives. Colrex nodded approvingly. Let the galaxy watch. Let them see what real warriors could accomplish. Let these humans see what happened when soft species pretended they could stand against the strong. Across the galaxy, in the Galactic Council's observation chamber, Representatives gathered around massive holographic displays that would show the coming battle in real time. This was standard procedure for any military action between Council species. The observers would ensure all rules were followed, record the battle for history, and verify casualty counts for the official records. Thulvan settled into his observation position with a feeling he could not quite identify. In his 6,000 years, he had observed countless battles. They followed predictable patterns. The stronger force would declare victory. The weaker would surrender or be defeated. Territories would change hands, and life would continue. It was the way of things, sanctified by tradition. But something about the human ambassador's words bothered him. We will neutralize the threat. Not fight. Not battle. Neutralize. Has anyone detected the human fleet? He asked his staff. No, Council Chair, came the response. No human military vessels have been detected leaving Earth or any human colony. No mobilization has been observed. Their military forces remain at normal peacetime levels. Prime Minister Sela sat in the Keleth observation area, her small body trembling. She had brought her senior government officials to witness what they all believed would be their species' end. The human ambassador had promised safety, but she could see no human ships, no human soldiers, nothing that suggested they could or would help. She had sent evacuation orders to the colonies, but there was not enough time. Millions of Keleth civilians remained on the threatened worlds. They would die in the coming battle, no matter what the Council rules said about protecting civilians. Rules meant nothing when orbital bombardment destroyed your cities. On Earth, General Park Ji-woo watched the same displays from her command center. Unlike the Council observers, she was not watching the Vraxian fleet. She was watching the data streams flowing in from assets positioned throughout Vraxian space. Assets that had been in place for months. Invisible. And patient. Status report, she ordered calmly. All infiltration protocols remain undetected, her chief intelligence officer reported. We have root access to 87% of the Vraxian fleet's computer systems. The remaining 13% will be compromised within the next 2 hours. Logistics network? Complete control. We can shut down their fuel distribution, parts supply, and food production at will. Communications? We own their entire network. Every message they send goes through our filters first. We can read everything, block anything, or inject false data as needed. Command and control? Their Admiralty systems are fully compromised. We can display false information on their screens, corrupt their tactical data, or simply turn everything off whenever we choose. General Park nodded slowly. This was how humans had learned to fight after the last war on Earth. You did not meet your enemy in glorious battle. You did not risk your soldiers in fair fights. You identified every system your enemy depended on, and you quietly took control of those systems while they were not looking. Then, when the moment came, you simply turned everything off. No honor, no glory, no battle, just results. And the Vraxians still don't know? She asked, though she knew the answer. They have no idea, General. Their security is designed to prevent other warrior races from hacking them during battle. They've never dealt with an enemy who would spend months infiltrating their systems before any conflict even began. The concept is outside their cultural framework. That was humanity's greatest advantage in the galaxy, General Park thought. Every other species thought about warfare in terms of direct conflict. Honor duels. Ship-to-ship combat. Glorious charges and brave last stands. Humans had evolved past such thinking about 300 years ago. Modern human warfare was about information dominance, system control, and making sure your enemy could not fight before they even knew a conflict had begun. It was not pretty. It was not honorable. But it worked. And it kept people alive. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. Let's show them what neutralization actually means. The countdown to the Vraxian fleet's planned jump to the Keleth colonies reached 1 hour. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Colrex was reviewing final attack plans with his senior officers when the first anomaly appeared. War Prince, his navigation officer said with confusion in his voice. I'm getting inconsistent readings from the nav system. Jump coordinates are flickering. Flickering? Colrex growled. What does that mean? Well, I don't know, sir. The system shows coordinates, then they disappear. Then they show different coordinates. I've never seen this before. Run a diagnostic, Colrex ordered. We cannot afford navigation errors. The diagnostic began. But before it could complete, other officers started reporting problems. The communications officer could not establish clear links with several ships in the fleet. The weapons officer reported targeting systems giving inconsistent data. The engineering officer noticed strange fluctuations in the power distribution network. Colrex felt irritation building. What is wrong with our systems? Are we under attack? His security officer checked her displays carefully. No attack detected. War Prince. No enemy ships in range. No weapons fire. No electronic warfare signatures. These appear to be internal malfunctions. Impossible. Colrex slammed his fist on his command chair. These ships were inspected and certified, ready for battle. Fix these problems immediately. But the problems did not get fixed. Instead, they multiplied. Within 30 minutes, half the fleet was reporting various system malfunctions. Ships lost communication with each other. Navigation systems failed or showed obviously false data. Targeting computers crashed and refused to restart. Power systems began cycling unpredictably. And then, exactly at the moment when the fleet should have jumped to begin their invasion, everything simply stopped working. The Eternal Conquest's main bridge went dark except for emergency lighting. Every computer display showed nothing but error messages or blank screens. The ship's reactors were still running. Life support remained functional. But every military system, every command function, every tool needed to operate a warship had simply died. Reports flooded in from across the fleet, all saying the same thing. Ships were dead in space. Nothing worked. They had power but no control. They had weapons but no way to aim them. They had engines but no navigation to direct them. Colrex stared at his blank displays in shock and growing horror. What happened? He demanded. What did this? His security officer, working from a backup tablet that still functioned, looked up with fear in her eyes. War Prince. I'm detecting our systems attempting to send data to unknown locations. It's like something is inside our computers, controlling them. That's impossible. Our security is the best in the galaxy. No one could hack our entire fleet. But even as he said it, Colrex knew it was not impossible. It had happened. Someone had done this. And he knew with sudden, terrible certainty who was responsible. A single communication channel activated on the bridge. Only one. The emergency command frequency that should have been impossible to access from outside the ship. A calm voice spoke in perfect Vraxian. War Prince Colrex. This is General Park Ji-woo of Earth Strategic Command. Your fleet is currently non-operational. Your logistics network is offline. Your communications are under our control. Your military capabilities have been neutralized. You have one opportunity to avoid further consequences. Stand down. Return to your territory. Abandon your invasion plans. If you comply, your systems will be restored, and no one needs to die today. Colrex's mind reeled. You did this? How? When? This is dishonorable. This is not warfare. This is treachery. This is neutralization, the human general replied calmly. We warned you. We gave you opportunity to withdraw. You chose to threaten our allies. We chose to protect them without allowing a battle that would cost lives. Your warriors are alive. Your ships are intact. Your honor can recover. But your invasion is over. Choose wisely, War Prince. The communication channel closed, leaving Kolrek standing in his darkened bridge, surrounded by useless technology, facing the impossible reality that his mighty fleet had been defeated without a shot being fired. In the Council observation chamber, stunned silence reigned. The observers had been watching, waiting for the spectacular space battle to begin. Instead, they had witnessed something unprecedented. The Vraxian fleet had simply stopped. One moment they were preparing for glorious combat. The next moment, they were floating helplessly in space. What happened? Someone finally asked. Thulvan's crystalline body pulsed with patterns indicating deep confusion. We have just witnessed humanity's concept of neutralization. They did not wage war. They simply removed the enemy's ability to fight. Prime Minister Sela collapsed into her seat, tears of relief streaming down her furry face. Her people were safe. The invasion would not happen. The humans had kept their promise. But as relief faded, a new emotion crept in. If humans could do this to the Vraxian fleet without anyone noticing, what else could they do? What other systems had they infiltrated? And most terrifying of all, had they done the same thing to everyone else? The emergency council session was called within 12 hours of the Vraxian fleet's sudden paralysis. The grand chamber filled rapidly with representatives, all demanding answers, explanations, and most urgently, reassurance that whatever the humans had done to the Vraxians could not be done to them. Ambassador Min-jun Kim walked calmly to his seat, his expression neutral and professional as always. He could feel the stares from every direction, could sense the mixture of fear, anger, and reluctant respect that now colored how other species looked at humanity. This was a delicate moment, and he had been preparing for it carefully. Council Chair Thulvan called the session to order with unusual haste, skipping the traditional protocols. His crystalline body pulsed with agitated patterns that indicated his own discomfort with the situation. Ambassador Kim, Thulvan said directly, this council demands an explanation for humanity's actions against the Vraxian Dominion. What we witnessed was unprecedented in galactic history. You neutralized an entire military fleet without firing a single weapon, without deploying a single ship, without any action that could be called warfare under our understanding of the term. How was this accomplished? And why was it done in this manner? Min-jun stood and walked calmly to the central speaking platform. He took a moment to look around the chamber, meeting the eyes or sensory organs of as many representatives as possible. The explanation is simple, he began, in his quiet, clear voice. 6 months ago, when the Vraxian Dominion began making territorial claims against the Kelith colonies, humanity's intelligence services assessed the situation as a potential threat to our allies. We took precautionary measures. Precautionary measures? The avian representative squawked with indignation. You infiltrated an entire civilization's computer systems as a precaution? Yes, Min-jun confirmed without hesitation. That is what precaution means. Identifying potential threats and preparing responses before violence becomes necessary. The Mandorian war chief rose, his massive armored form radiating anger. This is not warfare. This is treachery. This is dishonorable. You violated every principle of civilized combat. We did not engage in combat at all, Min-jun replied calmly. That was the entire point. No combat means no casualties. No casualties means everyone goes home to their families. This seems preferable to honorable death, but perhaps we are missing something in our understanding. The subtle rebuke hung in the air. Several of the more peaceful species shifted with what might have been agreement, while the warrior cultures bristled with offense. Thulvan raised one crystalline appendage to restore order. Ambassador Kim, you must understand our concern. If humanity can disable an entire fleet without detection, without warning, without any visible action, then what prevents you from doing this to any of us? What prevents you from dominating the entire council through invisible threats? Min-jun nodded as if expecting the question. Council Chair Tholvan. May I share a presentation that might clarify humanity's position? After brief consideration, Tholvan agreed. The chamber's holographic systems activated, and a timeline appeared in the center of the room, visible from all angles. This is Earth's history of warfare, Minjun began, his voice taking on the tone of a teacher presenting a difficult lesson. 4,000 years of recorded conflicts, millions of battles, hundreds of millions of deaths. We tried every form of warfare imaginable. We developed rules of combat, laws of war, codes of honor. None of them prevented the killing. None of them protected the innocent. The timeline advanced, showing increasingly destructive conflicts. Numbers appeared beside each war, casualty counts that made some of the watching species gasp in horror. 300 years ago, we fought what we call the last war. Nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, all deployed in what each side claimed was honorable self-defense. 90% of Earth's population died. Our planet was nearly rendered uninhabitable. We survived, barely, and we made a decision, as a species. The timeline showed Earth's recovery, the unification of all human governments, and the development of new military doctrines. We decided that warfare itself was the problem, not how warfare was conducted, but the entire concept of solving conflicts through violence. We decided that the most moral action was not to fight fairly, but to prevent fighting entirely. We decided that saving lives, all lives, including our enemies, was more important than honor, glory, or tradition. The Vraxian delegate, a junior officer named Thax, who had been sent since Colrex was still recovering from the shock of his defeat, rose to speak. His voice carried shame and anger mixed together. You speak of saving lives, but you humiliated the Vraxian Dominion. You made our warriors look like fools. You defeated us without giving us the chance to fight. Where is the honor in that? Where is the respect? Minjun turned to face Thax directly. Officer Thax, I have a question for you. How many of your warriors died in our operation? None, Thax admitted grudgingly. But how many were injured? None, but that's not. How many ships were destroyed? None, but you dishonored us. You shamed us. Minjun's expression softened slightly. Officer Thax, your entire fleet went home alive. Every warrior will see their families again. Your ships can be restored to functionality as soon as you formally abandon your invasion plans. Compare this outcome to what would have happened in a traditional battle. The Kelith Defense Forces would have fought. They would have lost. But they would have inflicted casualties first. Hundreds or thousands of Vraxian warriors would have died. Millions of Kelith civilians would have died when your fleet bombarded their colonies. The Council would have condemned the violence, but done nothing to stop it, as always. He paused, letting his words sink in. Instead, no one died. No one was even injured. The only thing that was harmed was pride. Tell me, Officer Thax, is your pride worth more than the lives of your fellow warriors? The question hung in the air uncomfortably. Thax sat down without answering, his shame deepening. Prime Minister Sela rose to speak, her small voice amplified by the translation system. I wish to say something, if the Council permits. At Tholvan's gesture, she continued, my people were preparing to die. We were evacuating children, saying goodbye to our families on the colonies. We expected to witness genocide, sanctified by your rules of honorable warfare. Her voice grew stronger, almost angry. The humans saved us without asking for anything in return. They saved us without glory or honor. They saved us because they believed it was the right thing to do. And now you condemn them for not letting millions die in proper fashion? What kind of civilization values honor over life? Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Kelith were known as peaceful, gentle, and generally unwilling to challenge anyone. To hear such harsh words from Prime Minister Sela was shocking. Tholvan pulsed with patterns indicating troubled thought. Ambassador Kim, we understand humanity's motivations. But the question remains, if you could do this to the Vraxians, can you do it to everyone? Min Jun had been waiting for this question. It was the critical moment of the session. Council Chair Tholvan, I will be completely honest with you. Yes, humanity has the capability to perform similar operations against most council species. Our intelligence services have been gathering information, identifying vulnerabilities, and preparing contingency plans since we joined the council 50 years ago. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Representatives shouted accusations, demanded that humanity be expelled, called for immediate military action against Earth. Min Jun stood quietly in the center, waiting for order to be restored. When Tholvan finally managed to silence the outrage, Min Jun continued calmly. However, having capability is not the same as having intention. Humanity has no desire to dominate the Council. We have no interest in conquering other species. We do not want to rule the galaxy. What we want is very simple. We want peace, and we want our friends to be safe. Accent. He activated another holographic display, showing Earth's military structure. Our entire strategic doctrine is defensive. Every operation we prepare is designed to neutralize threats, not to conquer territory. We develop these capabilities for the same reason that any person locks their door at night. Not because we plan to attack our neighbors, but because we want to sleep safely. The Crystalline Collective's representative spoke, their voice like chimes. But how can we trust you? How can we believe that you will not use these capabilities for aggression? Because we have not. Min Jun replied simply. We have had these capabilities for decades. We have used them exactly once, and only after warning the Vraxians repeatedly. Only after they refused all diplomatic solutions, and only after they threatened our allies. We did not use them to gain advantage. We did not use them to extract concessions. We used them solely to prevent violence. He looked around the chamber again. I understand your fear. Fear is rational when faced with capabilities you do not fully understand. But consider our actual behavior over the past 50 years. Have we threatened anyone? Have we demanded special treatment? Have we acted like a species seeking domination? Tholvan was forced to admit, no. Humanity has been a responsible council member. But this revelation changes how we view you. Perhaps it should, Min Jun agreed. Perhaps you should view us as a species that has learned, through terrible experience, that the best way to preserve peace is to make war impossibly costly for aggressors. Perhaps you should view us as guardians who stand ready to protect the innocent. Not through glorious battle, but through quiet preparation and overwhelming deterrence. A long silence filled the chamber as thousands of representatives considered his words. Finally, the Vraxian officer Thax rose again. I wish to say something, he announced, his voice steadier now. I have spoken with War Prince Colrex. He asked me to deliver a message to this council and to the humans. Thax paused, clearly finding the words difficult. He says that humanity taught us something we had forgotten. True strength is not the willingness to kill, it is the ability to kill, combined with the choice not to. The humans could have destroyed our fleet and everyone aboard. They chose not to. That choice required more strength than any battle. The admission from a Vraxian warrior sent ripples through the chamber. If even the Vraxians were reconsidering, perhaps humanity's point had merit. Tholvan pulsed with thoughtful patterns for a long moment. This council will debate humanity's methods and what they mean for galactic civilization. But first, Ambassador Kim, answer one final question. Will humanity remove these capabilities? Will you cease this invisible infiltration of other species' systems? Min Jun shook his head slowly. No. We will continue to monitor for threats. We will continue to prepare. We will continue to maintain the capabilities that allow us to protect ourselves and our friends without resorting to violence. This is not negotiable. Another body. Renother.8. Renother body. Then, you leave us little choice, Thulvan began. But Minjun interrupted gently. Council Chair, you have every choice. You can choose to see humanity as a threat. You can choose to expel us from the Council, though that will not change our capabilities. Or you can choose to see us as we truly are. A species that has learned from terrible mistakes, that values life above honor, and that stands ready to ensure that preventable wars do not happen. The choice is yours, and we will respect whatever you decide. The session ended without resolution, but with much to consider. As representatives filed out, some avoided looking at the human ambassador, while others approached him privately to ask quiet questions about defensive consultations. In the observation areas, millions across the galaxy watched and wondered. Had humanity just changed the nature of galactic civilization forever? And was that change for better or worse? The answer would become clear in time. But one thing was certain. The age of honorable warfare was ending, and something new was beginning. Dr. Lee Hana adjusted her teaching materials in the small classroom on the Keleth homeworld. She had been teaching here for 3 years as part of the cultural exchange program between humanity and the Keleth. But the last 2 weeks had transformed everything. Her students no longer looked at her with simple curiosity about human culture. Now they looked at her with a mixture of awe, gratitude, and something that might have been fear. The classroom filled with young Keleth, their soft fur in various shades of brown and gray. They were adolescents, by their species standards, equivalent to human teenagers. One student in particular, a bright young female named Ren, had been asking increasingly complex questions about humanity's actions against the Vraxian fleet. Good morning, class. Dr. Lee began in fluent Keleth, Fam, Access, a language she had spent years mastering. I understand you have questions about recent events. Before we begin, I want you to know that I will answer honestly. You deserve to understand what happened and why. Ren raised her small paw immediately. Dr. Lee, why did humans save us? It was a simple question. But Dr. Lee knew it carried layers of meaning. Why would a species from across the galaxy intervene? What did humans expect in return? What did they want from the Keleth? We saved you because we consider you friends, Dr. Lee answered simply. And because we believe that might should be used to protect, not to conquer. Another student, a male named Torvik, spoke up. But teacher, we are not warriors. We have nothing to offer humanity in return. We are weak. Why would you help the weak? Dr. Lee set down her teaching tablet and sat on the edge of her desk. Something she did when she wanted to have a real conversation rather than a formal lesson. Let me tell you about Earth's history, she began. About 350 years ago, my ancestors lived in a region called Korea. It was a small peninsula, caught between larger, more powerful nations. Korea was often invaded, often occupied, often told they were weak and unimportant. My ancestors survived by being smart, by working hard, and by helping each other. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's geography and history. Then came the last war. The powerful nations destroyed each other with terrible weapons. Billions died. The mighty fell. And in the aftermath, it was the survivors who had learned to cooperate, to value each other, and to protect the weak who rebuilt our world. The students watched the images with wide eyes, seeing the destruction and slow recovery of Earth. We learned something important, Dr. Lee continued. Strength is not about who can hurt others most effectively. Real strength is about who can protect others, who can prevent harm, who can build instead of destroy. You say the Keleth are weak because you are not warriors. I say you are strong because you are builders, scientists, artists, and teachers. Different strength, not lesser strength. Ren spoke again, her voice thoughtful. But Dr. Lee, the Vraxians had 1,000 ships. They had powerful weapons. They had warriors trained for battle, and humans defeated them without fighting at all. How is that not the ultimate strength? How is that not exactly what the warrior species respect? The ability to destroy your enemies. Dr. Lee smiled sadly. That's the question everyone is asking right now, Ren. Let me try to explain the difference between how humans think about conflict and how most galactic species think about it. She changed the holographic display to show human military doctrine. Most species see warfare as a test of strength, courage, honor, and capability. They believe that the winner of a fair fight deserves respect, and the loser must accept their defeat with dignity. Warfare is like a sport with rules, and the goal is to prove you are better at the sport than your opponent. The students nodded. This matched what they had been taught about galactic civilization. Humans abandoned that thinking 300 years ago. Dr. Lee continued. We stopped seeing warfare as a test or a sport. We started seeing it as a failure. Every battle that happens means someone failed to prevent it. Every death in combat means someone failed to protect life. So our military doctrine is not about winning fights. It is about preventing fights from happening in the first place. Torvik looked confused. But you defeated the Vraxians. You won. No. Dr. Lee corrected gently. We prevented a conflict. That is different from winning one. If we had fought the Vraxians in space battle, even if we destroyed every one of their ships, we would have lost. Because loss of life is failure, even if that life belongs to your enemy. The classroom was silent as the students processed this idea. It was so different from what they had been taught about how the galaxy worked. Ren stood up, her emotions clearly agitated. Dr. Lee, may I say something that might be disrespectful? You may always speak honestly in my classroom, Dr. Lee assured her. I have been thinking about this constantly since the Vraxians were defeated, Ren said, her voice shaking slightly. I have been thinking about my cousins on the colonies. They are 5 and 7 years old. They were going to die. The Vraxians were going to bombard the colonies. And even if the protocols said they should not target civilians, we all know they would have. Millions of us would have died, including children. Tears began rolling down Ren's furry cheeks. And when I asked the council representatives about this, do you know what they said? They said it was tragic, but necessary. They said, conflict has costs. They said the Vraxians had legitimate territorial claims that needed to be resolved through proper warfare. They talked about honor and protocols and civilized combat. But my cousins would still be dead. She looked directly at Dr. Lee. Then humans saved them without asking anything in return. And those same council representatives are angry. They say you fought dishonorably. They say you violated the rules of warfare. They care more about their rules than about my cousins' lives. Dr. Lee felt her own eyes growing damp. She stood and walked over to Ren, kneeling down to be at eye level with the young Keleth. Ren, you have just understood something that took my species millions of deaths to learn. Rules that allow children to die are bad rules, no matter how traditional or honorable they seem. Your cousins are alive because humanity decided that their lives matter more than galactic traditions. She stood and addressed the whole class. This is what I want you to understand. When humans talk about neutralizing threats instead of waging war, we are not being clever with words. We mean something fundamental. War is when you destroy your enemy. Neutralization is when you prevent anyone from being destroyed, including your enemy. We neutralized the Vraxian fleet because we wanted everyone to go home alive. Them and you. Another student raised a tentacle. But teacher, what if they attack again? What if other species decide to invade us because they think we are easy targets, protected only by human tricks? Dr. Lee nodded at the intelligent question. That is the interesting thing that is happening now in the galaxy. Other species are learning that attacking the weak is no longer safe because humans will not allow it. Not through threats or demands, but through simple demonstration. The Vraxians tried to invade. Their fleet is still floating helplessly in space. No one died, but the message is very clear. Attacking those under human protection will not succeed. She pulled up current galactic news feeds. Look at what has happened in just 2 weeks. 4 different territorial disputes have been resolved through negotiation instead of warfare. 3 aggressive species have suddenly withdrawn questionable claims. The galactic insurance rates for military operations have increased by 300%, because insurers now have to account for the possibility that entire fleets might be neutralized before firing a shot. The students looked at the data with fascination. The galaxy was changing, and they were witnessing it in real time. Torvik asked, "Dr. Lee, are you saying humans have ended all war in the galaxy?" "No." Dr. Lee replied honestly. "We have made war very difficult and very risky for anyone who wants to start one. But there will always be conflicts. There will always be disagreements and competing interests. What we have done is change the calculation. Before, aggressive species could plan military action knowing they would face fair fights with predictable outcomes. Now they have to consider that they might be defeated without ever seeing their enemy, without ever firing a shot, and without understanding how it happened. That uncertainty is a powerful deterrent." Ren spoke again, her voice quieter now. "Dr. Lee, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you think humans are good?" "I know that seems like a simple question, but I have been thinking about it constantly. You saved us, and I am grateful. But you also have power that terrifies everyone. You could probably disable our systems too if you wanted. How do we know you will always use your power to protect, instead of to dominate?" Dr. Lee was quiet for a long moment, considering how to answer honestly. This was the question everyone was asking. From the Galactic Council to conversations in homes across hundreds of worlds. "Ren, I cannot promise you that humans will always be good. We are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes in our past, but I can tell you what our culture values and what our systems are designed to prevent. We value life, all life, even our enemies' lives. We have built our government and military around checks and balances to prevent abuse of power. And we remember, always, what happened when we forgot these values." She pulled up images of Earth's recovery from the last war. Every human child is taught about the last war. We visit the memorials. We learn the names of the billions who died. We study how civilized, educated, moral people convinced themselves that destroying their enemies was necessary and just. We learn these lessons, so we never forget them. Dr. Lee looked at each of her students in turn. "Can I guarantee humans will never abuse our power?" "No. But I can tell you that we are very, very aware of the danger, and we work hard to prevent it. And I can tell you that our track record over the past 50 years shows we mean what we say. We have protected others and asked nothing in return. We have prevented violence rather than creating it. We have proven through our actions, not just our words, what kind of civilization we want to be." The classroom was silent for a long moment. Then, Ren spoke once more, her voice firm. "Then I trust you, Dr. Lee. And I am grateful my cousins are alive to grow up in a galaxy where humans are watching." Other students murmured agreement. Dr. Lee felt the weight of that trust, that gratitude, and she understood that humanity now carried a burden they could never put down. They had changed the galaxy, and now they were responsible for maintaining the peace they had created. After class ended, Dr. Lee walked through the Kelith city, watching the daily life of a species that had been saved from extinction. Children played in parks that might have been craters. Markets bustled with traders selling goods from colonies that might have been destroyed. Families gathered in homes that might have been ashes, all alive, all safe, all because humans had chosen to act. It was a heavy responsibility. But as Dr. Lee watched Ren's young cousins playing in a fountain, splashing water and laughing, She thought perhaps it was a responsibility worth bearing. The age of honorable warfare was ending. The age of protecting the innocent was beginning. And humanity, with all its flaws and fears, was guiding that transformation. 2 years had passed since the Vraxian fleet was neutralized. The Galactic Council chamber was filled once again, but this time, the atmosphere was different. Representatives no longer looked at Ambassador Min Jun Kim with simple fear or anger. Now their expressions carried complexity, calculation, respect, grudging acceptance, and in some cases, genuine appreciation. The debate that had raged for months was finally reaching its conclusion. The question before the Council was formally titled The Integration of Human Strategic Doctrine into Galactic Peacekeeping Protocols. But everyone knew what it really meant. Would the galaxy accept humanity's way of preventing war? Or would they expel humans and hope the old ways would survive? Council Chair Thulvan had aged visibly over the past 2 years. The stress of navigating such fundamental change in galactic civilization had taken its toll even on his long-lived crystalline species. He pulsed with patterns indicating both exhaustion and resolve as he called the session to order. This council has debated humanity's place in our civilization for 743 formal sessions, Thulvan announced. We have heard testimony from military strategists, ethicists, historians, and civilians from across the galaxy. We have examined every aspect of human doctrine and its effects on our society. Today, we will vote on the final proposal. But before we do, I invite key voices to make final statements. The first to speak was Vraxian War Prince Kolrex. He had requested the honor of addressing the council, and after considerable debate, it had been granted. He walked slowly to the central platform, his massive form no longer radiating arrogance but instead carrying a dignity that came from hard-won wisdom. 2 years ago, I stood before you planning to conquer the Kelith colonies. Kolrex began, his voice steady. I commanded 1,000 ships and believed myself invincible. I mocked the humans for their strange philosophies and their refusal to embrace warrior culture. I thought might made right, and that glory came from victory in battle. He paused, his reptilian features showing something that might have been shame. The humans defeated my entire fleet without firing a single shot. They could have destroyed us. They could have killed every warrior under my command. Instead, they disabled our weapons and gave us a choice. Go home, alive, or die for no reason. That day, I learned that true strength is not the ability to destroy. It is the ability to destroy combined with the choice not to. Kolrex looked directly at Min Jun Kim. The humans showed my people mercy we did not deserve, and would not have shown others. More importantly, they showed us a different way to think about conflict. In the past 2 years, the Vraxian Dominion has not invaded anyone, not because we fear human retaliation, but because we finally understand that there is no honor in crushing the weak. Real honor is in protecting them. Murmurs spread through the chamber. For a Vraxian war prince to speak such words was remarkable. Next, Prime Minister Sela of the Kelith took the platform. Her small form seemed larger somehow, more confident than it had been 2 years ago. I speak for all the species who have been saved by humanity's intervention, she began. Not just the Kelith, though we owe them our survival. In the past 2 years, 14 separate military conflicts were prevented by human strategic peacekeeping. 14 wars that would have killed millions were stopped before they began. No massive fleets, no glorious battles, no heroic sacrifices, just quiet prevention, invisible protection, and millions of people who went home to their families instead of dying for someone else's territorial ambitions. She pulled up statistical data. The galactic mortality rate from military conflict has decreased by 92% in 2 years. 92%. Economic productivity is up across all sectors because resources are no longer being diverted to warfare. Trade routes are safer. Border disputes are being resolved through negotiation because military solutions are no longer viable options. Sela's voice grew stronger. Some of you still believe humans are dishonorable for refusing to fight fair. I ask you to visit the memorials for species destroyed in honorable warfare. I ask you to explain to those billions of dead why honor was more important than their lives. Humans have given the galaxy something we claimed to want but never achieved. Actual peace. Not just the pauses between wars. The Mandorian war chief spoke next, representing the warrior cultures who had been most resistant to human methods. I will be honest, he said bluntly. My people hate what humans have done. They have made our warrior traditions meaningless. They have shown that centuries of training in combat, codes of honor, and glorious history mean nothing against invisible attacks we cannot even detect, much less defend against. He paused, and his next words came with difficulty. But my people also value truth and results. The truth is that our warrior traditions killed millions. The truth is that our codes of honor did not protect the innocent. The truth is that glorious history was built on mountains of corpses. If we are honest, we must admit that humans have achieved what we claim to want: peace through strength. We just never imagined that strength could look like this. The Mandorian chief straightened his armored form. My people vote to accept the human methods, not because we like them, but because we respect results more than tradition. That is also a warrior value. Representative after representative spoke. Some praised humanity's approach. Some criticized it but acknowledged its effectiveness. Some expressed continued discomfort but admitted they had no better alternative. The pattern was clear. The galaxy was changing its mind. Slowly, reluctantly, but genuinely. Finally, Thulvan called on Ambassador Minjun Kim to make humanity's final statement. Minjun walked to the central platform with his characteristic calm. He looked around the chamber at the thousands of representatives, each representing civilizations with their own long histories and deeply held values. Council members, I want to address the core concern that many of you still carry, Minjun began. You worry that humanity has too much power, that we can disable your systems, compromise your security, and neutralize your defenses. You wonder what prevents us from using this power to dominate rather than protect. This is a valid concern, and I will address it directly. He activated a holographic display showing human government structure. Humanity has built multiple levels of oversight into our strategic operations. Every intelligence operation requires approval from civilian leadership. Every peacekeeping action must be justified under our strict ethical guidelines. Every use of capability is reviewed by independent committees that include members from other species, including some of you in this chamber. The display showed details of human accountability systems. We have invited scrutiny of our methods. We have shared our decision-making processes. We have proven through 2 years of actions that our goal is genuine peace, not secret domination. Can we offer absolute proof that we will never abuse our power? No. But we can offer transparency, accountability, and a track record that speaks for itself. Minjun's expression became more serious. But I want to be honest about something else. Even if you vote to expel humanity from the Council, even if you declare us enemies, our capabilities will not disappear. We will continue to monitor galactic affairs. We will continue to protect our friends. We will continue to prevent unnecessary wars. You cannot vote away reality. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably, but Minjun continued. However, what you can vote for is partnership. The proposal before you creates a joint peacekeeping framework, human capabilities combined with council oversight. Our strategic doctrine guided by collective wisdom. Prevention of conflict, backed by galactic authority, rather than just human decision-making. He pulled up the proposed framework. Under this system, humanity becomes the galaxy's peacekeeping force, but not its ruler. We provide the capability to prevent wars, but you provide the authority to determine when and how that capability is used. We work together to create a galaxy where strength protects weakness, where disputes are resolved without bloodshed, and where every species can develop according to their own values without fear of conquest. Minjun looked directly at Tholvan. Council Chair, you said something to me 2 years ago that I have thought about constantly. You said that humanity ended the age of galactic warfare, and you were not sure if you should thank us or mourn. I understand that feeling. We have taken something away from this galaxy. The idea that glory and honor come from martial prowess. That is a loss. And I acknowledge it. His voice softened slightly. But what we offer in return is this: a future where no parent buries a child killed in pointless war. A future where disputes are resolved through negotiation, backed by the certainty that violence will fail. A future where the strong protect the weak, not for glory, but because it is right. Is that not worth more than the traditions we leave behind? The chamber fell silent. Minjun returned to his seat. The moment had come. Tholvan pulsed with complex patterns, indicating deep thought. The vote will now commence, he announced. The question before the council: shall we accept the proposed joint peacekeeping framework, integrating human strategic doctrine under collective galactic authority? The voting process took 3 hours as 300 species cast their decisions. When it concluded, Tholvan reviewed the results with patterns that might have been satisfaction or might have been resignation. The measure passes, he announced. 247 species vote in favor. 38 vote against. 15 abstain. The framework is adopted. Humanity's methods are now officially part of galactic civilization. Reactions varied across the chamber. Some representatives applauded with whatever appendages their biology provided. Others sat in silent acceptance. A few walked out in protest, though even they knew the decision was final. Tholvan called for order one last time. Ambassador Kim, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we formally invite humanity to establish the Strategic Peace Corps, as outlined in the framework. You will serve as the galaxy's peacekeepers, subject to the oversight and authority of this council. We trust that you will continue to honor the principles you have demonstrated over the past 2 years. Minjun stood and bowed respectfully. The human government accepts this responsibility. We will work tirelessly to prevent conflicts, protect the innocent, and maintain the peace that benefits all species. We understand the trust you have placed in us, and we will prove worthy of it. As the session concluded and representatives began to leave, small conversations broke out across the chamber. The mood was different from 2 years ago. There was less fear now, less anger, and more cautious hope that perhaps the galaxy was entering a new and better era. Officer Thax of the Vraxian Dominion approached Minjun as he prepared to leave. War Prince Kolrex asked me to give you a message personally. I am listening, Minjun replied. He says that the Vraxian Dominion requests human assistance in restructuring our military doctrine. We wish to learn how to be strong without being aggressive, how to maintain capability without seeking conquest. He says he wants to learn how to be warriors who protect, rather than warriors who destroy. Minjun felt genuine warmth at the request. Tell War Prince Kolrex that we would be honored to work with the Vraxian people, and tell him that he has already learned the most important lesson, recognizing that change is needed. As the Vraxian officer left, Prime Minister Sela appeared beside Minjun. Ambassador, I wanted to thank you personally. My cousins are alive because of your people. My species survives because of your choices. How does one express adequate gratitude for that? Minjun smiled gently. By living well, Prime Minister. By building your civilization, pursuing your dreams, and creating beauty in the galaxy. That is the only thanks we want. For the people we protect to live freely and happily. Sela wiped tears from her furry cheeks. Then we will dedicate ourselves to living in a way that honors your gift. Finally, Council Chair Tholvan approached Minjun, the ancient being pulsed with patterns indicating complex emotions. Ambassador Kim, I have been part of this council for 6,000 years, Tholvan said quietly. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed countless wars, noble sacrifices, and honorable defeats. I have believed, for all that time, that the galactic way was the right way, that our traditions preserved civilization. He paused, his crystalline body refracting light in melancholy patterns. Not entirely wrong, but wrong enough that millions died unnecessarily while I defended traditions that valued honor over life. That is a difficult realization for one as old as I am. Minjun responded with genuine respect. Council Chair, you are wrong about being wrong. Your traditions did preserve civilization for millennia. They created stability and prevented worse chaos. But like all things, they needed to evolve. You had the wisdom to recognize that, and the courage to accept change. That takes more strength than defending old ways simply because they are familiar. Thulvan pulsed with patterns that might have been gratitude. Ambassador, I have one final question for you. An honest question. And I ask for an honest answer. Do you ever fear that humanity might become what you fight against? That absolute capability to prevent violence might someday become absolute capability to enforce your will on others? Minjun was quiet for a long moment, considering his response carefully. Yes, he finally said. We fear that constantly. It is why we build oversight systems. It is why we invite scrutiny. It is why we teach our children about the last war and make them understand what happens when good people convince themselves that their power justifies any action. Fear of becoming tyrants is what prevents us from becoming tyrants. The day we stop fearing that possibility is the day you should remove us from this role. Thulvan pulsed with approval. That is the answer I hope to hear. Very well, Ambassador. But remember always that with great power comes not just great responsibility, but great danger. Stay vigilant against the enemy within, as much as the enemy without. We will, Minjun promised. That is our burden, and we accept it. As Minjun left the council chamber and boarded the transport that would take him back to Earth, he looked out at the stars and thought about the galaxy that was transforming. Fewer wars, fewer deaths, fewer children orphaned by conflict. It was not perfect peace, and it never would be. Human methods had their own costs and their own moral complexities. But somewhere out there, on hundreds of worlds, millions of people were alive who would have been dead under the old system. Families were intact that would have been destroyed. Children were playing who would have been casualties. Dreams were being pursued that would have been ashes. That was worth the burden. That was worth the constant vigilance, the moral weight, and the fear of becoming what they fought against. Humanity had learned its lessons in fire and blood, and now they would use those lessons to spare others the same pain. The age of honorable warfare was over. The age of strategic peace had begun, and humanity, quiet and watchful, would stand guard to ensure that anyone who threatened the innocent would find themselves neutralized, disarmed, and defeated before they could fire a single shot. Not through glorious battle, not through honorable combat, but through the simple, undeniable reality that violence would no longer succeed, and those who sought it would find only failure. In the darkness between stars, human intelligence systems continued their endless monitoring, their invisible preparation, their quiet vigilance, ready to act if needed, but hoping desperately that they would never need to act again, because the best battle, as humanity had learned through terrible experience, was still the one that was never fought. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5